Herr Flik,
Grüße
Helga
Sie.
Kindler. Wir sprechen
mich.
heute über 40 Jahre Goretex.
Aber jetzt haben wir es.
Und wenn es da besteht, dann ist es auch gut für andere Anwendungen.
You started with the company in 1968, if I'm right. So that was only a few years after the company moved out of Bill and Viv Gore's basement, if I'm right. What was the spirit back then?
Well, if I had to use one word for the spirit, it's family. It was a family company with the typical, comfortable and also challenging culture of a family.
You were part of the team when Bob Gore, almost 40 years ago, invented GORE-TEX, like the famous material we all know today. Did he have any clue what kind of big thing that would be, or?
I don't think nobody of us had a big clue. Maybe his father. His father was a visionary, and he said this will be one of the biggest inventions America has ever made.
So let's take a little step forward.
Yeah.
In 1977, if I recall that right, you personally took a role of this GORE-TEX membrane over the Atlantic from the USA to Germany to make it popular here. So Reinhold Messner was then one of your first customers.
Sure, we were a very small, tiny nobody. But then I learned Klaus Scheck from Munich, from the Scheck sports shop, and he said, why don't you show this to Reinhold Messner before he says goodbye to his sponsors in the Biwak-Schachtel, Munich, in his sports shop. This was in 1976 or 7. I took a membrane, waited until he had talked to his sponsors, took him behind the shoe rack, heated up the water, put the membrane on top of this little boiling thing. The vapor came through, you could see it. Then I turned it over, hoped that I wouldn't burn my fingers, hot water, made it, no water. And you know Reinhold, very smart man, he says, Mr. Flik, can you make me my Kunsch tent out of this? I said, sure, I was a salesman, I had no idea whether we could. So this was the first thing that we got really into the market with this tent.
How important is this closeness to sports, to different athletes for the success of the company?
Well, at the very beginning, I don't think we made big strategy. We just decided we have to develop a product which will yield, which will function at the highest requirements there is. So we had to go to the extreme people first, like Reinhold Messner, like the explorers, like people who cross the Atlantic, this kind of thing. And we said if it works for them, we would probably have a chance later to sell it to somebody on the street as well. We didn't know, we just tried. And that's how we started.
What are your visions for the future?
I think at one time we might even be able to fulfill a personal wish for one person and not just produce one product for a whole mountain market. There is a special guy out there who has a special need, and digitally he can tell us, and digitally we can make it. We're on the way to that.
That brings me to a next point, because we got a little surprise for you. I mean, like 40 years ago, everything sort of started with a tent, a few rooms around. There's at the moment Stefan Glovac and Robert Jasper coming to have a tent customized for them for the next expedition. And
you see, I didn't know, but that's already an example of what I just talked about.
Yeah, and I think we should just go over and look what is happening over there in the water tower.
Okay, I love to.